$118 million in cash, a luxury mansion, a groom in a coma, and a terrified girl forced to marry him by dawn. Ruth never thought her own father would sell her, but the price was right, and the man she was marrying, he might never wake up. What she didn't know was that he was already watching and waiting. The living room was unusually quiet, too quiet. Then came the sound of boxes being opened, gasps filling the air. A gleaming luxury car sat parked in front of the house. A mansion in the capital had just been signed over. $880,000 cash, right there in stacks. And the rest? Jade bracelets, antique treasures, and the centerpiece, a sapphire necklace called the Heart of the Ocean, worth over $30 million. It sparkled so brightly it almost felt alive. Ruth stood frozen. Her stepsister, Vanessa, squealed in excitement, already counting how much more she'd get when she got married. But then came the bombshell. Their father, Richard, looked straight at Ruth. "The Johnson family has already delivered everything. Ruth, you're marrying tomorrow." "What?" Ruth blinked. "Me?" Richard's tone turned ice cold. "The contract says Vanessa is marrying Daniel Johnson, but now you will go in her place." Vanessa folded her arms smugly. "You're lucky, you know. Even though Daniel's in a coma, he's still one of the richest heirs in the country. You should be grateful." Ruth's heart dropped. "If it's so wonderful, you marry him." Vanessa's smile cracked. "Don't be ridiculous." Ruth turned back to her father. "You want me to marry a man who may never wake up? My whole life would be over." Richard didn't flinch. "It's just a sacrifice. Temporary. Besides, are you forgetting your mother is still in the hospital?" At that moment, it all made sense. The trap was already closed. Ruth whispered, "You wouldn't." "I've already arranged to transfer her today," Richard said calmly. "If you don't marry into the Johnson family, you may never see her again. I can't promise anything." Ruth's fists clenched, tears rising. She had no job, no money, and no power. But she had one thing left: her love for her mother. "Just tell me," she said, her voice breaking. "Are you giving me a choice or an order?" Her father didn't even blink. "I'm your father. If I say marry, you marry." Vanessa leaned in with a mocking smile. "Go on, sis. Be useful for once in your life." Ruth's breath shook. She looked down, the weight of her decision crushing her. Then quietly she said, "I will. If you don't marry, you'll never see your sick mother again." The sky was cloudy the next morning. Even the sun didn't show up. Ruth stood in front of the mirror in a simple white gown. Her hair had been done by a stranger, her makeup by someone she didn't know. Everything was perfect, but none of it felt real. She had never imagined her wedding day would look like this. No groom, no music, no joy. Just a hall filled with strangers. Members of the Johnson family nodded stiffly, murmuring about how brave she was. They spoke like she was already a widow. "Look at her," someone whispered. "She's marrying a man who may never wake up." Another voice added, "Still, the Johnsons are the richest family in the capital. It's a smart move." Ruth stood there like a statue, hands cold, lips trembling. Then the question came. "Do you, Ruth Thompson, take Daniel Johnson as your lawfully wedded husband, to love, to care for in sickness and in health, till death do you part?" Her lips moved before her heart could stop them. "I do," she whispered. And just like that, it was done. A nurse wheeled Daniel in, his eyes closed, his body lifeless, a perfectly dressed, comatose groom. The image seared itself into Ruth's memory. She looked at him, trying to feel something. Nothing came. Later that evening, after the forced smiles and heavy gifts, Ruth was escorted to Daniel's private suite, a room far too large for one woman and one unconscious man. One of Daniel's aunts handed her a box. "And 10 million. Spend it if you need anything, and don't hesitate to ask for more." Ruth didn't reply. She just nodded, clutching the box like it might anchor her in a sea of confusion. Alone now, she sat beside the bed. Daniel lay there motionless, his face calm. He was handsome. In another life, maybe she would have been happy to marry someone like him. But this wasn't that life. She leaned closer, softly muttering, "Even though I'm just a stand-in bride, I should introduce myself. I'm Ruth, your new wife." There was no answer, no movement, just the quiet hum of machines in the background. She smiled faintly, brushing his hair away from his forehead. "Don't worry. You can stay a vegetable. Just don't drag me down with you." She turned to leave the room when the door creaked open. A man stepped in, tall, smug, and clearly drunk. "Hey, cutie," he said, leaning against the door. "You're my brother's new wife, right?" Ruth frowned. "Who are you?" "Victor," he said with a grin. "Daniel's little brother, but unlike him, I'm fully awake." He took a slow step forward. "It must be lonely on your wedding night. How about I help out? I could give my brother a baby, Ruth's heart stopped. "Get out," she said firmly. Victor's grin widened. "He's not using you. Why waste all that beauty?" Then he lunged. Ruth screamed, backing into a corner. He grabbed her wrist. "I said let go." She kicked, scratched, and fought back with everything she had. He laughed, trying to pin her down. Suddenly, crack. The door burst open. 2 men in black stormed in. Victor was dragged off, yelling, "What the hell?" Then, a calm voice came from the shadows. "Break both his arms and send him back to the second house." Victor froze. Wait. Who said that? But it was too late. Victor's screams echoed down the hallway. Back in the bedroom, Ruth trembled, trying to understand what had just happened. Unseen to her, behind the divider wall, Daniel Johnson opened his eyes. Not groggy, not confused, but sharp, focused. He had been awake for days. He'd seen everything. Ruth's fight, her courage, her tears, her helplessness, and yet, she never asked for pity. He watched her now, still pretending to be asleep, as she curled up on the sofa, wiping away silent tears. Then he muttered under his breath, barely a whisper, "She defended me, so I'll let it slide." The car pulled up in front of the Bai residence, her childhood home. Ruth stared at the front gate for a long time before stepping out. The mansion hadn't changed. Same old cracked paint, same air of tension in the yard. But she had changed. She took a slow breath and stepped through the gate. Inside, her stepmother Martha was already complaining. "She's late. We've been waiting for nearly an hour. These days the younger ones think they can do anything they like." Her father Richard waved her off. "Calm down. She just married into the Johnson family. It's normal for her to be busy." Martha huffed, just as Ruth walked in through the door, cool, calm, holding a black case in one hand. "Good evening, Dad." "Stepmother," she said, her voice polite but hollow. "Finally," Richard smiled, arms wide. "My dear Ruth, look at you, married into the Johnsons and glowing already." Martha's eyes flicked to the black case. Is that from the Johnson family?" "Yes," Ruth said, placing the box gently on the table. Her stepsister Vanessa suddenly appeared, adjusting her earrings and flashing a fake smile. "Wow, sis, you look different. I guess money really does change people." Ruth smiled. "Some people change for the better. Others just stay bitter." Richard cleared his throat, eager to open the box. "So what did they send us? Jewelry? Antiques? Come on, open it." He flipped it open eagerly. Inside lay 2 large stones, dull, grey, and unimpressive. "What the—" Martha blinked. "What is this?" Vanessa frowned. "Ruth, are you joking? Did the Johnsons send us rocks?" "They're not just rocks," Ruth said calmly. "They're jade from a foreign auction, supposedly priceless." Richard squinted. "They look ordinary to me." They say the most valuable things look ordinary at first glance. Ruth's tone was casual, but her eyes held quiet defiance. Martha hissed, "What kind of nonsense is this? You bring us stones as gifts." Vanessa scoffed. "Wow. Married into the richest family in the capital, and this is what you come back with? Embarrassing." Ruth picked up 1 stone, examining it slowly. "If you're not satisfied, you can sell them or throw them away." She gently placed it back. Either way, she added, I did my part. Richard tried to laugh. You know how much we spent raising you, Ruth. The least you could do is show a little appreciation. I did, she said, her voice now quiet but firm. I married a man in a coma for you. I gave up my life. For you. There was a pause. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Please, you act like you were the victim. You're lucky you even got that chance. Ruth turned to her. And you're lucky I didn't expose what you really did. Richard stepped forward. Ruth, let's not bring up the past. You're doing well now. That's what matters. So, about your husband's family. Any more gifts coming our way? She tilted her head. You're still counting what you can gain from me? Martha frowned. Watch your tone. We are your family. Family. Ruth's eyes glinted. Did family threaten to hide my sick mother in a mental hospital unless I obeyed? Did family treat me like a pawn? Richard's smile dropped. That's enough, he snapped. You should be grateful. Grateful? Ruth's voice cracked for a moment. Grateful for being sold off? For being traded like a piece of property? Her fists clenched at her sides. Then suddenly, she exhaled slowly, carefully. She reached into her bag and dropped another envelope on the table. There's $5 million in there. Don't ever contact me again. She turned to leave. Vanessa's voice rose behind her. You're really going to cut us off? Ruth didn't turn. You already did that the day you watched me walk down the aisle alone. And with that, she stepped out, the front gate clicking shut behind her. Back at the Johnson estate, Ruth walked quietly through the halls. She paused outside the study door, unsure if Daniel was asleep or awake or somewhere in between. Good night, she whispered. Inside, behind the closed door, Daniel sat at his desk, reading through company files. His assistant, Mr. Harris, stood nearby. She visited her family today, Harris reported. I know, Daniel said quietly, without looking up. She didn't ask for help, not once, Harris added. Daniel nodded. She's tougher than she looks. Are you ready to reveal that you're awake, sir? Daniel closed the file, finally lifting his eyes. Not yet. I want to see how far she's willing to go. On her own. The next morning, Ruth stood in the lobby of Johnson Group's headquarters, wearing a plain blouse and low heels. Her hair was tied back neatly. She looked nervous but determined. I'm here for my first day, she told the receptionist. Upstairs in the marketing department, whispers were already flying. Did you see the new girl? She's dressed like she came from a village. Probably here through connections. Watch, she'll be gone in 2 weeks. At her desk, Ruth sat quietly, organizing her files. She didn't speak. She didn't complain. Then came the voice that cut through the room like a knife. Well, well, said Jasmine, strutting over in red heels and a designer dress. If it isn't our new charity case? Ruth looked up, calm. Good morning. Oh, sweetie, you don't need to pretend, Jasmine smirked. We know you pulled some strings to get in here. Ruth ignored her. Jasmine leaned closer. Or maybe you slept your way in. The room went silent. Another co-worker, Molly, added. Word is the CEO has a secret wife. Maybe it's her. Laughter followed. Ruth stood slowly and said nothing, but her eyes said everything. Jasmine stepped in her way. This is our department. We don't need anyone pretending to be something special. Molly crossed her arms. Yeah, let's fire the new girl pretending to be a queen. Let's fire the new girl pretending to be something special. The day started like any other. Ruth arrived early, as usual. She quietly placed her bag under the desk, rolled up her sleeves, and began typing. Her tasks were dull, but she did them well. No complaints, no gossip. But across the room, Jasmine was watching. She leaned back in her chair, spinning her pen between her fingers. She's too quiet, she whispered to Molly. She thinks we'll just forget she's here. Molly raised an eyebrow. Let's remind her she's not welcome. A plan was already forming. Later that afternoon, when most of the office had stepped out for lunch, Jasmine slipped over to Ruth's desk. She opened Ruth's bag carefully, looking around to make sure no one was watching. From her own purse, she pulled out a sleek velvet case. Inside was a shimmering diamond necklace. "10 million, she whispered. "Let's see you explain this." She zipped Ruth's bag closed and walked away like nothing happened. Back in her seat, she waited. 1 minute, 5, 10. Then, loud enough for the entire floor to hear, Jasmine stood and gasped. "My necklace!" she cried. "My diamond necklace! It's gone!" Heads turned instantly. "What necklace?" someone asked. Jasmine's voice shook expertly faked panic. "The one my fiancé gave me. I took it off earlier because it was too heavy. I left it in my bag. It's gone." Molly jumped up. "We need to search. Everyone, check around." Eyes turned to Ruth. She had just returned from the printer, holding a stack of documents. "What's going on?" she asked. Jasmine pointed at her like a hunter claiming a prize. "You were the only one here while we were gone. Check her bag." Ruth blinked. "What?" "You heard me," Jasmine snapped. "If you didn't take it, you've got nothing to hide." "I don't need to prove myself," Ruth replied calmly. "If something's missing, check the security cameras." "Oh, we will," Jasmine said sweetly, "right after we check your bag." The manager, already alarmed by the noise, rushed over. "What's happening?" "Mr. Paul," Jasmine said dramatically, "my N10 million necklace is missing, and we think Ruth took it." Mr. Paul hesitated. "This is serious." Ruth stood her ground. "Then treat it seriously. Don't search me. Call security and check the footage." Jasmine cut in. "Why delay? She's stalling." A junior intern, clearly uneasy, stepped forward. The necklace is in her bag." Gasps filled the room. Mr. Paul slowly reached down, unzipped Ruth's handbag, and there it was, sitting perfectly nestled in the middle. Ruth's face went pale. But her voice didn't shake. "That's not mine. Someone planted it." "Oh, please," Jasmine laughed. Now she's making excuses. "Call the police," Ruth said, locking eyes with the manager. That threw Jasmine off. "What?" "I said call the police," Ruth repeated. "If you think I stole an N10 million necklace, then arrest me. But when the cameras show who really did it..." She stepped forward. "Make sure you're ready to face the fallout." There was silence. Then a voice came from the hallway. "No need to check the footage. I saw everything." Everyone turned. Daniel Johnson was standing at the doorway. Sharp black suit, calm face, eyes like steel. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Oh my God, it's the CEO. Isn't that Daniel Johnson? What's he doing here?" Jasmine's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel stepped into the office slowly, letting his presence fill the room. He looked around once, then directly at the manager. "Mr. Paul," he said evenly, "I assume you're in charge here." "Yes, sir." Paul nearly tripped over himself. "We were just about to..." Daniel raised a hand. "Stop." He turned to Jasmine. "You accused this woman," he said, nodding toward Ruth, "of theft." Jasmine nodded quickly. "Yes, she is my wife," Daniel said. Silence. A second passed, then 2. Jasmine's eyes widened. What? "I said," Daniel repeated, stepping beside Ruth. "This woman you've bullied, framed, and humiliated is my wife." Gasps echoed across the office. Chairs creaked. Mugs dropped. Molly whispered, "Wait, what?" The manager looked like he might faint. Ruth didn't move. She just looked up at Daniel, her face unreadable. He turned back to Jasmine. "You planted that necklace, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Jasmine stumbled. No, I didn't." "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" he asked. She shook her head. "Mr. Johnson, please, I didn't mean..." He stepped even closer. "You tried to ruin my wife," he said coldly. "Now face the consequences. Fire everyone who mocked her, effective immediately." The phone call came at night. Ruth was in the kitchen, stirring soup, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She wiped her hands and picked it up. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then a voice. Cold. Female. Familiar.
If you want to see your mother alive again, come alone. Ruth froze. The soup boiled over behind her. Who is this? She whispered. The line crackled, then came a low laugh. You know exactly who this is, Ruth. Come to the old warehouse behind Valley Street, now, or she won't make it to morning. Click. Ruth dropped the phone. Rain pelted the broken roof of the warehouse.
Grace, weak, pale and terrified, sat tied to a chair in the corner. Her breaths were shallow, her eyes flicking wildly across the darkened space. Then the metal door groaned open. Ruth stepped inside, soaked, shoes squelching. "Mom!" she cried, rushing forward. A hand grabbed her shoulder and shoved her back. Jasmine stood there, dry and smug in a trench coat, arms folded, watching. She said. "No touching, we're not done talking." Ruth's eyes were wild. "Let her go, you've already done enough." "Enough?" Jasmine scoffed. "You stole my life, my job, my future." Ruth's voice cracked. "You did that to yourself." Jasmine ignored her. "I gave you a chance to leave quietly," she continued, circling Ruth slowly. "You chose to stay. Now let's see how far you're willing to go to keep her alive." She pulled out her phone and began recording. "Here's the deal. Kneel." Ruth blinked. "What?" "Kneel," Jasmine repeated. "On the dirty floor, in front of me." Ruth looked at her mother, tied, bleeding slightly at the temple, barely conscious. Jasmine stepped closer. "Kneel, Ruth, or she doesn't leave this place." Ruth's lips trembled. Her knees buckled slowly, and then she dropped. The ground was cold and wet beneath her palms. "There we go," Jasmine purred. "Now, crawl." Ruth shook her head. "Please, crawl to me and beg, then I'll consider letting her go." Silence. Then Ruth lowered herself further and began to crawl. Each inch was pain. Her dress tore, her palms scraped on gravel. "Louder," Jasmine called, voice gleeful. "Beg me like you mean it." "Please," Ruth whispered. "Please, just let her go. I'll do anything. Just don't hurt my mother." "Anything?" Jasmine's eyes lit up. "Say it again." "I'll do anything," Ruth said, barely able to lift her head. Then Jasmine lifted her foot and pressed it down on Ruth's shoulder. "You'll beg me?" she sneered. "Then crawl across the floor." There was a sudden metallic slam. Everyone froze. From the darkness, a voice thundered. "Take your foot off my wife." Jasmine turned, startled. Daniel Johnson stood at the warehouse entrance, calm, composed, terrifying. He walked in slowly, every step echoing through the silence. 2 bodyguards followed behind him. Jasmine stumbled backward. How did you—" "I've always been watching," Daniel said. "I warned you once. You didn't listen." Ruth, still on her hands and knees, looked up at him. "Daniel." He was already beside her. He knelt, gently pulled her to her feet, then turned to Jasmine. "Let her go," he said, voice hard. Jasmine hesitated. Daniel took out a black envelope and tossed it at her feet. "And 200 million. Take it. Leave the country. Disappear. You'll never need to work again." Jasmine stared at the envelope like it was poison. "That's all I am to you?" she said softly. "A mistake to be paid off?" Daniel didn't blink. "Yes, but I loved you," she whispered. "I still do." He turned his head. "And that's exactly why you need to leave." Jasmine looked between him and Ruth, who now stood quietly, tears in her eyes. The rage came like a flood. "No," Jasmine snapped. "No money, no leaving. If she wants her mother, she's going to crawl again." Daniel took 1 step forward. "If you touch her again," he said coldly, "you won't live to regret it." Jasmine's smile twisted. "You still think she's better than me?" Daniel looked her dead in the eye. "I don't think. I know." Jasmine's voice shakes as she points at Ruth. "If you want her, crawl across the floor. Let's see how much you love her." The chandelier above the grand ballroom sparkled like a sky full of stars. Crystal glasses clinked, soft music played. Camera flashes lit up the entrance as elite guests, CEOs, celebrities, and royalty arrived in designer gowns and sharp tuxedos. The annual Metropolitan Capital Charity Auction was the crown jewel of the social season, and tonight, all eyes were on Daniel Johnson and his wife. Ruth stepped out of the car slowly. She wore a deep emerald gown that hugged her waist and fell like silk rainwater around her ankles. Her hair was swept up into an elegant bun, neck bare except for a single sapphire pendant, a gift from Daniel. She was calm, but her hands trembled slightly inside her clutch bag.
Daniel offered his arm. "Ready?" Ruth nodded. "As I'll ever be." Inside the ballroom, the murmurs began. "Is that her? She's the one who married Daniel Johnson? She used to be poor, right? A nobody? She's beautiful. I heard she fought off Jasmine and came out on top. Jasmine stood across the room in a crimson dress, too tight and too loud. Her face was powdered. Her smile was strained. Beside her, Victor leaned close and whispered, 'Are you sure this will work?' She sipped her wine. 'It has to. After tonight, Ruth won't be able to show her face in this city.' He raised an eyebrow.
'And if it doesn't?' She narrowed her eyes at Ruth. 'It will.' Ruth tried to stay near Daniel, but soon enough people pulled him away. Handshakes, conversations, reporters. She stood alone near the display table where rare art and family heirlooms were being auctioned. Suddenly someone bumped into her. 'Oh, sorry.' It was a young woman, flustered, nervous. 'You dropped this,' she said, handing Ruth a folded paper. 'I didn't,' Ruth began, but the girl was already gone. She opened the note. 'Room 302. Come quickly. Something's wrong with Daniel.' Ruth's heart skipped. She looked around. Daniel was nowhere in sight. Without a second thought, she made her way upstairs. 'Room 302. Ruth hesitated. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. Then she pushed it open. Daniel? But it wasn't Daniel. It was Jasmine. In a robe, standing beside a disheveled bed. Across from her, Victor was buttoning his shirt. The room smelled of wine and perfume. Cameras clicked. Flashbulbs went off. Then came the whispers. 'Oh my God, is that Ruth? She was in the room. Is she having an affair with both of them?' Jasmine stepped forward with fake horror on her face. 'Ruth? What are you doing here?' You tricked me,' Ruth said, voice trembling. More cameras, more flashes. Jasmine turned to the door dramatically. 'I can't believe this. Daniel trusted you.' Victor played along, shaking his head. 'I should have known.' Ruth's face burned. 'This isn't real. They set me up.' But no one seemed to hear her. They only saw what they wanted to believe. The door slammed again. And this time Daniel was the one standing there. Behind him, security, press, executives. He looked at Ruth, then slowly turned to Jasmine and Victor. 'Room 302, he said softly. 'Very clever.' Jasmine stepped forward. 'Daniel, listen, I didn't know she'd be here. I was just—' 'You drugged the wine downstairs,' he cut in. Victor went pale. 'What? No. I've had the staff tested. You both spiked the drinks and staged this mess to disgrace my wife. Did you think I wouldn't know?' Jasmine's voice shook. 'Daniel, wait. Please.' He stepped in front of Ruth and took her hand. She gripped it like a lifeline. Then he turned to the crowd. 'Let it be clear,' Daniel said, his voice calm but thunderous. 'My wife was lured here under false pretenses. What you see before you is a desperate attempt to destroy her.' Ruth swallowed hard. 'Thank you,' she whispered, so softly only he could hear. Jasmine sank to the floor, her mask slipping. 'I just wanted my life back.' Daniel turned to Victor. 'You tried to destroy her,' he said coldly. 'Now you're expelled from this family.' Gasps rang out across the room. Victor's mouth opened. 'Daniel, I said what I said.' Guard stepped forward. 'From today,' Daniel continued, 'you are no longer part of the Johnson name. All access, all privileges, gone.' Daniel looked Jasmine in the eyes one last time. 'You were never the victim, just the villain who wrote her own ending.
It had only been 3 days since the auction scandal. Since Jasmine and Victor had been publicly disgraced. Since the media headlines had turned Ruth from the nobody wife to the woman who stood tall. But not everyone was done trying to rewrite the story. Especially not Emily. The sun streamed through the windows of the Johnson Group's rooftop cafe, where Ruth sat alone, quietly stirring her tea. She was dressed in a soft sky blue blouse, her hair pinned simply, her aura calm and controlled. She didn't flinch when a shadow fell across her table. "Mind if I join you?" a smooth voice asked. Ruth looked up. There she was, Emily Osborne, Daniel's ex, daughter of a powerful family, former socialite, and, until recently, still hoping to become Mrs. Johnson. Her dress was expensive, her makeup perfect. She looked like she had walked straight out of a magazine, but her eyes were calculating. "Sure," Ruth said coolly, gesturing to the seat across from her. Emily smiled. "I didn't think you'd recognize me." "I did," Ruth replied, sipping her tea. "I just didn't think you mattered." That caught Emily off guard. She laughed lightly. "I see Daniel has been coaching you in confidence." Ruth met her gaze. "No, life did that." There was a beat of silence before Emily leaned in. "Let's not waste time," she said. "I came here for one reason, to talk about Daniel." "Then talk," Ruth said. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not Jasmine," Emily said with a rehearsed smile. "I don't do screaming, I do strategy." "Good for you," Ruth replied. Emily tilted her head. "You must know Daniel and I were together for 5 years. I watched him build his empire. I know his tastes, his moods, the way his coffee should be brewed. And yet," Ruth said, "he still chose me." Emily's fingers tensed slightly around her cup. "Men make mistakes when they're emotional." Ruth said nothing. She just waited. Emily leaned back, changing her tone. "You're graceful, I'll give you that. But you don't belong in this world. And yet," Ruth repeated softly, "here I am." Emily pulled out a slim white envelope from her clutch and placed it on the table. Ruth looked at it but didn't touch it. 10 million naira, Emily said. Cash, yours. Walk away quietly. You can disappear from his life, no fuss, no scandal. You'll be free to live wherever you want, and I'll make sure your mother receives the best care money can buy. Ruth looked at the envelope again, then slowly raised her eyes. "I've been offered money before," she said calmly. Emily smiled. "Not like this." Ruth pushed the envelope back toward her. Then she stood, and in one smooth, elegant motion slap, the cafe went quiet. Emily's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief. Ruth's voice was quiet, but it cut like ice. "He's not for sale." Ruth leaned in just slightly, her words steady. "You had 5 years, Emily. You lost him. Don't come looking for spare parts in my home." She picked up her bag. "Tell your driver to drop you off at Reality on the way home." Then she walked away, leaving Emily speechless in the middle of the rooftop cafe, the envelope untouched on the table. Emily clutched her cheek, whispering through clenched teeth, "This isn't over, not by a long shot." The Johnson family mansion was unusually tense. Staff moved quickly, whispers passed in corners, and the air buzzed with anticipation. A full family meeting had been called not in the conference room, but in the open courtyard, under the weight of public eyes. Daniel stood tall at the head of the long table. By his side, Ruth, dressed in cream silk, calm but composed. On the other side of the courtyard, Vanessa stood with her arms crossed. Her lipstick was smudged, her attitude defiant. And beside her, late as usual, Jasmine strutted in with sunglasses over her eyes and drama clinging to her like perfume. "You really called the entire family here for a girl," Jasmine said loudly. "She's not just a girl," Daniel said coldly. "She's my wife." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "You're blinded by her. You used to have standards." "And you used to have shame," Ruth said softly. The table fell silent. Vanessa pointed at her. "You think you've won because he chose you. Jasmine was there before you. I was meant to be the bride. Everyone knows it." "You were meant to be a pawn," Daniel said, stepping forward. "Just like Jasmine. But Ruth? She didn't scheme her way in.
She was thrown into this and still came out standing. Jasmine ripped off her glasses. This is ridiculous. I gave you everything. I loved you first. You loved what I represented, Daniel replied, not who I am. Suddenly, from behind them, Mrs. Osborne, Jasmine's mother, entered with 2 security officers and a lawyer. Jasmine's smirk wavered. Mom? Mrs. Osborne didn't return the smile. Don't mom me, Jasmine. What's going on? Jasmine asked, unease finally creeping in. Her mother handed the lawyer a file.
I'm cutting you off. What? You kidnapped a sick woman. You drugged staff. You bribed security. You disgraced this family, her mother said, each word sharper than the last. I covered up your mess for too long, but I won't anymore. Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes. So you're choosing them over me? No, Mrs. Osborne said coldly. I'm choosing what's right. Jasmine collapsed into a chair, eyes burning, hands trembling. Meanwhile, Ruth's family, her father Richard, stepmother Martha, and Vanessa stood awkwardly near the far column, summoned as witnesses. Daniel turned to them now. Ruth has given you more than you ever deserved, he said, and you've treated her like garbage. Richard stepped forward. We were only trying to give her a better life. You sold her, Daniel interrupted, to me, like property. Richard's mouth opened and closed. She doesn't owe you anything, Daniel continued. Not now, not ever again. He turned to Ruth. Do you want to deal with them? Or should I? Ruth looked at her father for a long moment. Then she shook her head. I'm done, she said simply. Vanessa looked away. For once, she had no comeback. Daniel raised a hand. A guard stepped forward with a black folder, documents, evidence, printed emails. He opened it and addressed the group. This file contains proof of Jasmine's kidnapping of Ruth's mother, he announced. Medical records, security footage, signed confessions. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jasmine's lips trembled. That was a misunderstanding. No, Daniel said. It was a crime. She's just trying to ruin me, Jasmine whispered, just like Emily. Suddenly, another familiar voice echoed from the stairs. Emily Osborne. She looked calm, but not smug this time, just resigned. I was never competing with Ruth, she said. She was always what you and I weren't real. She faced Daniel. I came to say goodbye. Daniel nodded, politely but firmly. Goodbye. Emily turned and walked away. No cameras followed, no crowd cheered. It was over. Next, Daniel turned to Victor, standing silently near the exit in a dark suit, trying to appear invisible. I gave you a second chance, Daniel said. You used it to humiliate and harm the woman I love. Victor shrugged. So you're kicking me out again? Daniel nodded to the guards. No, I'm erasing your name from this family. Victor was grabbed by the arms. You can't do this! Daniel didn't flinch. You're not a Johnson anymore. You never were. As the guards led Victor away, Jasmine sobbed into her hands. Vanessa stood frozen. Ruth looked at them, all the people who once controlled her life now falling apart in slow motion. She stepped forward only once to say one thing. You all taught me what power looks like. Thank you for showing me how never to use it. Daniel took Ruth's hand as the sun broke through the clouds overhead. Let's go home, he said. But Ruth didn't know yet their story was only just beginning. The mansion felt different now. The air was no longer heavy. The staff smiled more. Even the wind that passed through the garden seemed softer, like it, too, had been holding its breath for too long. In the dining room, laughter echoed against the polished walls. At the head of the table sat Grace, Ruth's mother, dressed in a flowing peach wrapper. Her cheeks had color again. Her smile, once weak and uncertain, was full and unforced. Ruth served her a second helping of yam porridge, her hands moving gently, eyes sparkling with joy. Mom, she said, you'll love this. The chef added fresh crayfish this time. Grace chuckled. Ah, and here I thought I taught you everything. Daniel entered then, sleeves rolled up, holding a wooden bowl of fruit.
I chopped these myself, he announced proudly. Ruth raised an eyebrow. You mean you watched the chef chop them while you supervised? Supervising is a skill, Daniel replied, taking the seat beside her. And I'm very skilled. Grace laughed softly. You too. You've brought life back into this house. Daniel looked at her kindly. And you brought life back into Ruth. Thank you for raising the woman I now love. Ruth turned her face quickly, wiping the corner of her eye. Don't go getting sentimental now. Daniel leaned toward her. Too late. They all laughed together. No cameras, no drama, just the sound of home of healing. Later that night, the house was quiet again. Ruth stepped into the bathroom holding her stomach. Daniel called from the bedroom. You okay? She didn't answer. He frowned and walked over, knocking gently on the door. Ruth? She opened it slowly, eyes wide, face pale. I think I'm sick, she whispered. Daniel blinked. What? What kind of sick? She stared at him for a moment, then shrugged weakly. I don't know, but I've been feeling dizzy. Nauseous. From the corner of the hallway, Grace appeared with a knowing smile. Daniel turned. What's funny? Grace sat down on the hallway bench. You're a smart man, Daniel. Think a little. He stared, then turned back to Ruth. His eyes widened. No. She didn't say a word, just bit her lip. He stepped forward. Wait, are you saying? Ruth nodded, eyes brimming. Daniel stood frozen. I'm going to be a father. She smiled softly. Yes. He took a step back, then forward, then froze again. Wait, I'm going to be a father. Then he laughed, loud, free. He picked Ruth up into a warm hug, spinning her gently. Grace clapped her hands with joy. As Daniel placed a gentle kiss on Ruth's forehead, he whispered, This is only the beginning.